So welcome everybody once again. So the whole Scaleway team and I are delighted to have you here. Today's event is the last part of a series of webinars focused on SaaS, software as a service. And today's one is about discovering the advantages of Kubernetes for hosting a SaaS solution. Actually, since this Tuesday, on our website, scaleway.com, we now have a dedicated section about all things SaaS under the solution top tab. You get the link right in front of your eyes on the screen. I welcome you to have a look whenever you're ready. Who am I? My name is Jean-Guillaume. Call me JG, right? Jean-Guillaume Burlet, brand evangelist at Scaleway. I'll be your host for today. I joined a few months ago, just before you know what. This webinar was originally released in French in late May with our colleague Louis Moreau, which is with us behind the scenes, yes. He's actually a product marketing manager with Scaleway and handles all things Kubernetes, amongst other things. So he came up with this very cute webinar. He did leverage his developer background and experience when he was back then juggling with old generation container service platforms. Me, I'm more of a conceptual kind of guy, but I hope that my experience will benefit you because I've been training, let's see, database admins to Oracle ERP, hardware sales reps to VMware virtualization back then, SMB resellers to cybersecurity on the cloud, hosting firm believers to public cloud, and even iSeries AS400 IBM admins to open source API middleware. So when it came to tackle SaaS and Kubernetes, I felt like the task was quite natural, to be honest. Right, so today's agenda. This format won't be very long. It should take us 30 minutes tops, right? We'll have an introduction, you know, who we are, what we do. We will then see what is a SaaS solution overall, a quick reminder, and how the software market is evolving toward a SaaS model. We'll then have a look at a quick presentation of Kubernetes without getting into very technical details, mostly because I don't have the same tech expertise as our DevOps on KLS. Patrick and Louis will be here at the end of the webinar should you have any questions. So feel free to ask any, and they'll help me answer them. All right? Okay. We'll then look at the two main SaaS architecture choices, namely multi-instance versus multi-tenant. And finally, we'll conclude with all the advantages that Kubernetes can offer, especially to host your SaaS applications. Right. So who is Scaleway? We are the cloud branch of the Iliad Group, the one behind Free, which is the main telco operator in France. On the global market, as far as cloud is concerned, we're in the top 10 worldwide and second in Europe, according to the latest Netcraft figures. We did pioneer the bare metal cloud market in Europe. A few facts and figures. Today, we have more than 250 collaborators between our 5 data centers and our 2 main offices, one in Paris and one in Lille. Headquarters in Paris. I'm currently in La Maison Lille. You can see a funky decorado behind me. And La Maison stands for house or home in French. Sorry, our offices are called that way because everything is designed to make us feel, well, at home, cozy, with close to ideal working conditions. We even put slippers on sometimes to walk around. We happen to have a few open positions, so if you feel like joining us, please visit the career page, and we'll have like 20 of those. So 5 data centers. 4 in the Paris area and 1 in Amsterdam. We actually released Kubernetes in Amsterdam today. We'll talk about this once more later on. We mean to open 1 more data center this year or earlier next in Warsaw, Poland. As far as our customers are concerned, we can count them in more than 160 countries. Feel free throughout the webinar to drop your own flag in the chat window. I'm always curious to see where people are actually coming from. I saw actually I think I saw a Dutch name. I think I saw a Bas participating. It sounds Dutch, might be Flemish, so I don't know. Anyway, feel free to drop your flag. I love that. I have 2 of my own, and I will tell you more about that later. So 160 countries with customers. In France, we do have some big names, as you can see, Safran, Winamax, Sistran, and Adobe, which are 2 big SaaS players on the markets. So that's who we are. That's who we work with, where we are, what do we do? So Scaleway is an umbrella brand overseeing 3 brands: Data Center, Teddybox, Elements. You might be familiar with that if you've seen some of our webinars before. So for Data Center, our focus is to provide you with everything you need to do to bring your own servers, as in private infrastructures, square meters, air conditioning, electricity to facilitate your own, bring your own hardware initiative, and then you let you run your apps on it. For Teddybox, our focus is on dedicated servers on a monthly plan, right? Many servers to choose from. We have like more than 100 references. And last but not least, our entire public cloud ecosystem, which is made up of mainly 6 branches. So compute, storage, network, IoT, artificial intelligence, and all the tools to manage them all. I won't present them all because it might take a while. So only the main ones who allow you to run a SaaS applications on top of. So we got virtual instances in a compute branch, including Kapsule, our managed Kubernetes product, which we'll be covering today. On the storage part, we have object storage, archiving with C14, also block storage to add volumes to your instance, useful in a Kubernetes architecture. On the network branch, load balancers are quite useful. Last, management tools on the last line. Console, our community favorites amongst developers, very favored. We have API on all our products. Any service may be queried. We have the CLI to automate operations from your terminal. We actually released our version 2 earlier this week. And also Terraform and the likes would also be a match. You may refer to our latest video presentation of Scaleway Elements, which you might find in the links, if I remember well. Maxime will make that available for you. That way you'll be able to get into more details. Now, a few words on the SaaS solutions themselves. So it stands for Software as a Service, as you know, mainly a distribution method or model, which usually involves a subscription for a product, a tool, or a service. So SaaS products are now mostly hosted in the cloud, so with us, for instance, and are accessible anywhere, usually via a browser. That's all you need, right? In the past, companies actually relied on a licensing model. When buying software, you usually went one shot and could then enjoy your software for the rest of the life cycle, notwithstanding support and update contracts, of course. Today, this trend tends to be over, and we're starting to use monthly payment plans, i.e. subscription, to use the same software. Fundamental difference between this legacy software and the SaaS is the need to install old software, a version of software on your machines and maintain it all. Whereas in the SaaS case, it implies that the software provider will take care of both hosting and the maintenance. Okay. We came up with a nice infographic of our own. You can see an extract on the right-hand side. I'm not sure if we can share that live as we speak, but either way, I'm going to have a few words on this. We chose to showcase 7 reasons why SaaS tastes better with Scaleway. So you can see a little teaser here. If we play the SaaS and Kubernetes matchmaking game, so number 1 reason would be about high availability apps. So it's definitely a match for Kubernetes because this is one of the main benefits. Number 2 is about data protection. Well, it's less a stake, but still. Number 3 is about scaling, so total match. Number 4 about multi-cloud, amen to that. Number 5 is about team potential. We actually mentioned Kubernetes.
Jean-Guy, maybe just before going further, we are going to share in live.
Cool. We can do that. Let's do it.
Yeah, because maybe for the people just to have a highlight about what is 3, what is 4.
Please do. Do you want to do that yourself?
It's already on the screen, so we can follow. We are following your words. Do not
Perfect.
hesitate.
So SaaS and Kubernetes matchmaking game. So 1, HA, high availability. So main benefits for Kubernetes. So that's 1 out of 1. 2 is data protection. Well, it's not Kubernetes' main benefits. We'll talk about that later on. 3 is about scaling. Well, we have a total match here. 4 is about multi-cloud. It's actually one of the main drivers for Kubernetes adoption around the market. Number 5 is about team potential, I believe. So we actually mentioned Kubernetes in the solution that actually contributes to team collaboration potential, or at least improvement pools. 6 is about premium support. Well, linked products, which we will see later on, are eligible to premium support. So I guess that's a match. And the last one, the seventh, is about the developer toolbox, which resonates with the approach that Kubernetes is adopting. So yeah, we get a solid, like, I'd say 5 to 6 out of 7. Not bad, right? Well, thanks for sharing, Melody.
You're welcome. We're going to get back to your presentation.
Sure. Can everybody see my screen now?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So I retrieved some figures for you to make it more concrete, maybe from various international sources, to better illustrate how SaaS is indeed leveraging cloud computing to mark its footprint on the market. Here, for instance, we can assess how massive the shift to cloud is perceived by telling the differences in proportion between 2018 and 2020, as well as this interesting educated guess claiming that 95% of workloads will run in the cloud by 2025, right? So it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, as we usually hear. Another way to look at it is the combined view of top criteria and top initiatives for SaaS and cloud adoption. And clearly, the drivers are not only distinct, but they actually match some of the benefits we're going to cover during this webinar. Have a look at the top 3 here: cost and ease of use for criteria, and cost and container use for initiatives. So those are 2 huge SaaS/Kubernetes advocates. So this is really a nice illustration of what's going on here. Now, since SaaS is only part of the cloud market as we know it, let's have a closer look on the delivery dispersion between its components. So IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS. We're going to cover those in a bit. So there's a forthcoming shift between plus 7 and plus 12%, so it seems, in favor of cloud preference, and a striking 21% actually drop of the non-cloud footprint by the end of this year. So with SaaS actually taking the lead with a third of the delivery model projections in 18 months' time. So this is getting concrete. And in case you still had doubts and on-premise workloads running, time to make the shift. Don't worry, we're here for you. So moving on to the advantages of the SaaS itself. From a consumer point of view, first, we have a lower initial cost, because, well, SaaS generally means subscription, as in no initial license agreements. So this drives costs down. It's diluted between software usages, along with the infrastructure management, which is being taken care of by the supplier, thus reducing IT purchasing and maintenance costs for the underlying infrastructure. So great driver here. Install and config stages are much faster. You mitigate the delays, you increase productivity. You facilitate the upgrades because the SaaS providers will do that themselves, so no need to worry about it. Concerning accessibility, all you need to use for a SaaS app, save a few exceptions, like namely consuming applications like Adobe Creative Suite, for instance, which requires a local client. Otherwise, it's pretty much a browser and an internet access. Right? It's pretty basic. So easy access. Think of Salesforce. It's pretty much a full-blown CRM. It's usually the reference for a SaaS application on the market, and you can use it directly from a browser. Anybody can use it, tweak it and turn it on and leverage it and use it in our daily activities. So last point is scalability. SaaS providers usually offer many subscription options, as well as flexibility to amend those options as your business is growing. Say in hyperscale circumstances, you need to onboard new talents on the team, but all you need to do is add user licenses for them, and later discard them whenever you don't need them anymore, right? So that's for a consumer point of view. For a SaaS editor point of view now, once again, cost is an important leverage, as traditional design implied back then to make sure that such software worked on any type of infrastructure or any type of OS, which would create an extra complexity layer. Well, SaaS development only requires your app to work on different browsers, which dramatically reduces complexity and development time, and thus reduces cost, right? Another advantage, which I believe is one of the biggest, is switching to a recurring revenue. So instead of, say, forcing clients to pay a unique fee to acquire the soft, you can choose to receive diluted monthly fees, which facilitates monthly and annual revenue predictability. So the projections are easier to make in business review. It's reassuring for your investors or your finance department. So a big advantage here. SaaS is also easier to use for your customers since they can test it directly from a browser without any install prior, which makes testing much easier and which makes a new customer acquisition process even simpler. Right? It's not uncommon actually to see a free tiering model where you can use the software for free, say for a month, to some extent, and then you ensure the user ultimately subscribes to your software out of satisfaction, thanks to the testing span that you allowed for him, right? Finally, when you roll updates and you serve clients with new features, well, it's you do have a straight benefits on that part as well. Because sorry, there I get a notification that disturbed me. Sorry about that. It will simplify operations because the deployment will be a single one for all your customer base to enjoy. So that's fine. Right. So visualizing the as a service topic just once more. I know you've all seen one of these graphics before. It's probably pre-cooked, but anyway, just really quick. You can spot the difference between customer and provider ownership as you move from one stack to another. Okay, it's just about consuming IT or cloud resources that, like any other utility, water, gas, electricity, you name it. Depending on your use case, you might use computing, storage, network components, would be IaaS, up to the application level, i.e. SaaS, without owning or spending anything on the infrastructure. So typically when you own your infra, there's a series of steps required to maintain all those layers, from the compute storage network trio to the virtualization layer. And then you can move your way up to the OS, to the middleware, to the runtime, to the data, to the apps. So IaaS offers IT resources in a virtualized environment. For instance, are 3 types of instances at Scaleway: dev, general purpose, and GPU. Then comes the PaaS, where yet another layer is removed from your care, right? As those focus on service development platforms to facilitate code deployment or application deployment. And last, SaaS, as we've just seen, is really the software made available to customers, and which helps individuals and companies to increase productivity, which is, as we saw with the figures just before, fitting a global market need. Okay, so we've taken the SaaS story. Right, let's take a spin on Kubernetes. Kubernetes, so what's behind this odd word? Allegedly Greek for pilot or helmsman, it shows in the graphic representation here. It's also the root word for govern, right? And all its derivatives. So let's keep this notion, a governor or a conductor for your infrastructure, in that you will get a container-centric management environment to orchestrate all computing resources, networking setups, storage, workloads, etc. So you get closer to the level of a simplicity obtained with service platforms, while at the same time keeping IaaS solution flexibility. So it's a bit of a better of both worlds, right? Not only that, but you also keep application portability between different cloud or IaaS providers. We'll review those in a few moments. So Kubernetes is an open source product that was initially developed by Google and is maintained today by the CNCF, so the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. Here's a quote from the team here, which you can read. In a production environment, you may need to manage huge quantities of containers, and you will need to manage containers running apps to make sure there's no downtime, very important. Handling thousands of those running simultaneously on a cluster of machines seems to be a rather unpleasant task. Yeah, pretty daunting if you ask me. Not necessarily the most encouraging, but that's the reality. So we need to find a way to ease the process for you, which is pretty much what we chose to do, right? We chose to develop a managed Kubernetes offer to ease the pain. So right there in our cloud compute ecosystem, top right-hand side, as you can see. So the goal is to smoothen multi-product management. So red squared here, from instance to data volumes to load balancers, but also services in the dotted lines here that are not necessarily directly handled by Kubernetes, yet are still intimately tied to your applications. For instance, a container registry, to purposefully deploy containers on your Kubernetes environment, or managed databases to handle all data involved in your application. So you require them, but so it's part of the extended ecosystem. So this diagram, for instance, is one of our managed Kubernetes Kapsule architecture sample. We won't spend too much time on this diagram. What we can take away from this is that the service itself, Kapsule, is free today, as you only pay for the Scaleway resources, so compute, storage network, nodes, volumes, load balancers. So repeat, no fee for the Kubernetes service itself. We host the service for you on a highly available, multiple time replicated environment of ours and 100% managed for you. Okay, so just manage your containers from this service and the rest is on us. Okay, so after reviewing SaaS and Kubernetes, now onto another section of this webinar, the different models of SaaS architectures. We'll see where we're going after. So here the focus will be multi-instance versus multi-tenant. So we'll skip other models like mono-instance or flex tenancy, which are deemed as minor nowadays. So from a global standpoint, the end result of such an architecture for an end user won't differ that much. But what will vary is the underlying architecture choices that you will make. So in the multi-instance case, so on the left-hand side, several companies could run their own instance. Everything is compartmentalized. Each organization can access its own application or database. On the other hand, in the multi-tenant case, several companies can access only one instance with a single DB, probably a less flexible architecture, yet one that I believe simplifies greatly processes like feature addition or bug fix, for that matter. So our goal here, mind you, is not to tell you which is best. It really depends on your business case, right? Still, we will weigh the pros and cons of these two architecture types, so you can choose freely the one that suits your needs best. All right? Okay, that's a deal. So let's start with multi-tenant. Okay, multi-tenant first. So the fit is essentially to get started and to get up to speed. Concrete advantages include cost effectiveness, as we already mentioned earlier, as sharing the same infra and sharing the same resources results cheaper. No brainer. Tech simplicity, technically speaking, due to a shared infra, that it's much easier to maintain, you will have smoothened operations. Another benefit would be efficiency over time, because you will spend less time and less resources to update all features, plus all users access the same applications, which is easily maintained as well. And you will have an always up-to-date warranty on the solution, allowing all users to enjoy the last version of your software at all times. Some disadvantages include shared database. In that any action affecting the database will impact all clients, leading potentially to an application level data segregation and data exposure prevention from the development team. They have to take such measures, so it results in additional complexity. Okay, and unfortunately, also any security breach will have a massive impact as it hits all system users. Right. So multi-instance then. So the fit is quite different. We'll rather talk about scale and security. So not the exact same context, right? So concrete advantages, once again, data isolation, where each user or team or organization will have its own database and infrastructure. Greater flexibility and maybe finer configuration control. Greater availability, we're talking about HA, high availability, as an instance going down, indeed won't affect all users, but only those dealing with and accessing this particular instance. In other words, one client might be upset, but all the others won't. Right. You also have greater scalability, as it's always easier to add resources to a small application. Say if your client grows quickly, so does his application. And so resources might be added locally, which is way smoother to operate. Right? Okay, some disadvantages: harder deployment, as the distributed infrastructure has multiple instances, and higher cost as the application layer isn't shared this time, but rather mounted on a client-specific infrastructure. right? So we played the resemblance differences game. In this context, why would Kubernetes become a great tool to host your SaaS application then? So let's get to the core things here. So first of all, both of these architectures' needs are met because deployment is simplified and possibly even fine-tuned. Below screenshot that you can see here comes from the actual Kubernetes tutorial page showing in 6 simple steps the Kubernetes deployment process. Pretty self-explanatory. 1, create a cluster. 2, deploy the app. 3, explore it. 4, publicly expose it so it can be accessed from outside by your customers. 5, scale it up according to your customers' needs. And 6, perform the necessary updates to your apps. At least the documentation makes it simple. that's a start. So second bonus from Kubernetes, beyond the philosophical positioning and the great streamlining of documentation throughout the years, is provisioning. So it relates to provisioning. Automation comes into play. So automation, for instance, in the multi-instance architecture, end users will request an application deployment at register stage, so up the scheme, which will trigger an API call via a middleware layer that will query Kubernetes control plane and ask for a new instance provisioning. So your job will be easier thanks to that automated process, as every newly onboarded customer will have all his infrastructure provisioned for him. Right? Now, this may be time-consuming when it comes to be repeated. We've actually seen occurrences where infrastructures or architectures are pre-provisioned depending on growth estimation. It's actually a good reflex to have. Say if every day 5 new organizations or customers join in, well, pre-provisioning 5 or 6 environments in advance helps avoiding too long waiting times once those customers will claim infrastructure as theirs, right? So another feature to smoothen operations is to use a custom host name, for instance. So lately, end users have been shifting a bit of value to their domain or apps domain, which urged Kubernetes to set up tools to ease this process as well, up to the point of becoming self-service. Namely, as a click of a button, users obtain a domain or subdomain to use their application. Think Nginx ingress controller, typically. Right. So about scaling, another benefit from Kubernetes, one of the most important, if you ask me, you can now automatically resize your nodes. So below screenshot comes from our actual Scaleway console interface. So you can choose the autoscale function directly. If your nodes reach a certain utilization point or percentage of use, then new nodes will automatically be deployed in your pool. A pool is a set of nodes that share the same config, right? Same configuration. So along with auto scaling, you also get auto healing capabilities. So if a node is in trouble, self-healing measures will take over, say power off a reboot, so auto healing. And not only on nodes, but auto scaling also applies on applications themselves, either upward or downward. And Kubernetes offers this function natively as a trigger. So if you look at the command below, reading this really quickly, you can literally define a deployment rules for my app here, so that it ramps up to 10 pods whenever CPU percentage of use hits 70. It's not magical. It's just a cool command line interface. We might actually be developing some more content on that. Stay tuned. Finally, last critical advantage: portability, interoperability. Too often, when we think Kubernetes, we have in mind starting out with a certain cloud service provider or CSP. Essentially, that means that we'll end up, in our mind at least, locked in or not able to depart from this CSP. So what the CNCF, Cloud Foundation, remember, has done to act on that fear is to provide certificates for the managed Kubernetes services out here to confirm that all standards are met according to their own standards grid. So goal is to indifferently use any managed Kubernetes service from one CSP to another. So in other terms, you have the guarantee to be able to migrate one day, should you choose to. We'd rather not, but hey, free will, right? So such is the promise of multi-cloud. that is pretty dear to us at Scaleway. If you've seen our latest communications, you might be familiar with our tonality on that. So if you mean to dig a bit deeper on that particular topic, you may have a look at the dedicated section in Kubernetes documentation about tutorials, including ours, if you're more familiar with our interface. So, well, here we are, concluding our webinar. So what is worth remembering? Kubernetes is an excellent hosting option for your SaaS infra and application, whichever your architectural choice may be. If you're facing trouble scaling up your application, if your DevOps team have nothing against real productivity gains when it comes to deployment, stability, and of course, security. So that's pretty much it for me. All that's left for me to do right now is thank you for your attention. I hope you all enjoyed. And as always, do not hesitate if you have any further questions or concerns. Remember, the webinar solution we're currently using is offering several tabs here for chat, polls, and also questions. And me and my colleagues are here to answer them. So now is the time to pop the questions.